And we're back. Good morning from the office, North Georgia's only live online morning show. I'm your host, BKP. I now have joining me on the line this morning from District 29, Georgia State Senator Josh McKoon. Senator McKoon, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great. I know we're not in session, but for me, I told everybody the election ended last Tuesday, in the most part, for a lot of areas in Georgia. It's pretty much over. So we took the end of the week and we decompressed. We had the holiday weekend. Now it's time to get right back to work. I have been reading several articles concerning the, Georgia receiving the nod for the 2019 Super Bowl. And, Senator, it just seems like every time I read something like that, somehow they know how to get your name in the article.
Well, we spent a lot of time during the legislative session arguing about this issue. And, I would have been stunned. Jay Bookman had a piece in the Atlanta Journal a couple of days ago basically saying that Arthur Blank would be getting a fraud warrant and prosecuting people in the NFL if Atlanta was not awarded the Super Bowl after everything that was done. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars that have been sacrificed at the altar of bringing this one-time event to the city of Atlanta, not to mention the fact that it was one of the reasons given for not moving forward with religious freedom legislation. So I don't think it should be a surprise to anyone that we've received this game in 2019. I think anyone who actually does an honest analysis is going to say, look, it's ours. We paid for it. The return on investment for taxpayers is terrible. I know a lot of business owners in Columbus. I'm sure you probably know business owners in your neck of the woods. They love a $10 million sales tax holiday. They could probably create a lot of jobs if they were told that the first $10 million they generated wouldn't be taxed. So anyway, it's not a surprise to me. It's sort of the conclusion of what I believe is a fairly sad chapter of crony capitalism at the General Assembly, where we threw hundreds of millions of dollars at Arthur Blank, the Atlanta Falcons, and the NFL, and in exchange we're getting a one-time event that will not generate nearly the amount of money that's been invested by taxpayers.
Well, let me ask you a question, and this is something that's become confusing to me. It's like, I know the answer, but I got to ask anyway. How did big business, how did Super Bowls, how did the NFL get tied into if we have religious liberty bill, they won't come here? And that being said, is the religious liberty bill, as we all know, the one that just passed both chambers this past session that the governor vetoed, it basically mirrored the Bill Clinton signature bill. So, I mean, I just don't understand, since President Clinton signed the RIFA bill into national law, I didn't see the NFL pulling out of the country. So how did we get in this predicament where this, that is the crux of how you get a Super Bowl?
Well, I think it goes to a larger issue. I was reading an article last night talking about the rise of Donald Trump, and it talked about how the country has become more and more divided, not between right and left, but between a group of effete elitists with a much different point of view than the rest of the country. And big business is largely run by the first group. So the NFL, the NBA, they see this opportunity, just like other big businesses, to make these threats. Oh, we're not going to bring our game to your town, if you don't comply. And I think it's just about trying to enforce these liberal cultural norms by any means necessary. And in the case of the Super Bowl, look, I wish that the city of Atlanta taxpayers had the $300 million in hotel motel tax revenue back that they committed to build Mercedes-Benz Stadium. This was a bad deal for taxpayers from the get-go. But when you talk about the motivations for these big businesses, it's because a lot of the people leading these companies and leading these institutions don't share the values of mainstream America. And they believe now that they've got the economic clout to push everybody around and demand that their cultural norms not just be accepted, but that basically that we surrender from a legal standpoint, in this case, the protection of free exercise. So that's where I think it's coming from.
Well, it used to be that the NFL, and I'm a little older, and the NFL used to be a place where on Sunday you watch football, and you try to attempt 10 yards and 4 downs and get into this thing called the end zone and beat the other team. And it was a couple hours to where you didn't care if somebody was a Democrat, you didn't care if they were a Republican, you didn't have any. There was no political football on the field, and it was something we all could enjoy. But now it's such a political. It's so political in these states to determine hundreds of millions of dollars and getting a game. At the end of the day, it's a game. And actually, for the Super Bowl folks, the clock does not set any different. It sets the same. The timeouts are the same. The official replays are the same. The cleats are the same. But somehow we treat this as though it's not a game anymore and it's our whole world.
Right. I mean, it's become big business. It's everything is sacrificed to the dollar. I mean, if the NFL were to restart today, there wouldn't be a team in Green Bay. There wouldn't be a team in Buffalo. This is no longer about a group of folks around the country participating in a professional level of this sport. It's about big business and making as much money as possible, and frankly, making money on the backs of taxpayers. It's a great model. I mean, I would love it if the state of Georgia would agree to pay a third of my overhead for my law office. I could be a lot more productive. I could create a lot more jobs, right? And that's what's happening here.
Well, let's move this to the next part. And I've seen everything posted on social media that, we got the 2019 Super Bowl, so Georgia, let's not screw it up and do anything religious for 3 years. Is this basically saying that any form of religious liberty bill or anything that comes to the floor that has religion or transgender or anything tied to it is dead on arrival for 3 years, with the threat of every day that the NFL will pull the Super Bowl out? I mean, what say you?
I think undoubtedly that argument's going to be made. And let's be clear, we're not just talking about religious freedom legislation. I imagine if the campus carry legislation is reintroduced, this threat will be made.
Yes.
Because now that these corporate elites understand that when they say jump, certain legislative leaders will say how high, then they will now, expand their influence. They will start, essentially exercising a veto over anything that, they don't like. So an incredibly dangerous precedent has been set in terms of delegating away the authority of the legislature to out-of-state CEOs. And so, we need to, as the legislature should always do, we should deliberate carefully, and we should come back with legislation on this issue next year. Obviously, not identical to what we passed this year because the governor is going to veto that. So we've got to try to find, some other measures, perhaps pieces of the bill that passed, and submit those to the governor. But we should not allow the threat of the Super Bowl being withdrawn determine whether or not we're going to protect the right of free exercise in our state.
Well, this weekend, I happened to be watching one of the Sunday morning shows, and they were talking about the NFL awarding Georgia the Super Bowl in 2019. And Senator, they brought your name to it. They said that's unless Senator Josh McKoon does something. So did you hear that comment made concerning yourself this weekend?
I did. I heard Jeff Dickerson's sort of parting shot at the end of the show, and of course we all know he is Kasim Reed's #1 apologist, and it's not a surprise that he would want to make sure he could do everything to secure what I guess they believe is part of the mayor's legacy, is this incredible white elephant of Mercedes-Benz Stadium and Super Bowl 53. But again, I'm not going to be deterred. I don't think other conservatives are going to be bullied by what the NFL or anybody else has to say about it. I mean, if you look at, and it's not exactly the same issue, but it's a similar dynamic. If you look at the North Carolina legislature and the governor of North Carolina standing strong on their position regarding transgender bathrooms, what I've been seeing almost every week out of North Carolina is a new economic development announcement, a new jobs announcement. And why is that? Because businesses make decisions based on the tax and regulatory environment. At the end of the day, all of these things that generate so much press coverage, their press releases are not worth the paper they're printed on. We haven't seen any of these threats actually come to fruition. But even if we knew that they would, I said in a point of personal privilege speech last year, Patrick Henry famously said, give me liberty or give me death. And Mayor Reed, said, give me liberty or give me the Super Bowl. And I just think that's a sad commentary on where we are in our public discourse.
Let me go one more direction on this that is concerning to myself. Tax-free holidays set up in the state of Georgia. So hardworking middle class, and not just middle class, I'm just going to say hardworking middle class mom and dads out there need that $100 tax break. They go out, school's getting ready to start. They get a computer for the kid. They get their socks, underwear, their clothes, their book bags. And the state of Georgia says, you know what, that's what we want to do. We want to help out families that are, need the money to put our kids back in school. Somehow, a tax exemption, sales tax exemption to Super Bowl tickets got tied on to my socks and underwear purchase for children to go back to school. And before I ask you this, I have talked to state senators throughout the state of Georgia that said, well, I don't like it. I would have voted against it. And this is what gets me. I would have voted against it, but it was tied to the sales tax holiday, and I could not vote against sales tax holiday for the middle class. So my question is there something we can do to make sure that we divide the bills and they stand on their own in the future, or something we could do to protect us from putting a rider like this, as ridiculous as, Senator, if you would have had and not yourself, but if somebody would have had a bill that said, hey, I want to sponsor this, and then everybody would have had to go home and say, I stood on my vote for this, hey, that's fine. That's how the process works. But the way they tagged it, what say you?
This is exactly the reason I'm glad you brought this issue up. This is why people hate politics and politicians. Because the fact of the matter is, the only reason they attached the Super Bowl sales tax exemption to the annual school sales tax holiday bill is exactly that. So it would give legislators an out to say, well, I had to vote for it. Well, of course, had we voted the entire bill down, does anyone really believe we would not have passed a school sales tax holiday? Clearly, we would have. But let me tell you something else. As disgusted as I was by the whole situation, I offered an amendment to say, okay, let the city of Atlanta, if the city of Atlanta thinks it's so important to get the Super Bowl that the sales tax money needs to be rebated, let the city of Atlanta cough up $10 million. And there was a recorded vote on that amendment to give people the opportunity to say, okay, state of Georgia taxpayers are not going to be on the hook for this. If Mayor Reed and the Atlanta City Council wants to put the city of Atlanta on the hook for it, that's up to them. And that amendment failed. So you need to, people that say, well, I voted no because this was attached, you need to look how they voted on that amendment. Because there was an opportunity to perfect the bill in a way that would have just made the city of Atlanta responsible for it. Because frankly, if you even buy this tired, ridiculous economic development argument, we know where the economic development is going to occur. It's going to occur in downtown Atlanta at the hotels and the restaurants. It's not going to be occurring in LJ. It's not going to be occurring in Columbus. And so the idea that that's going to be financed on the back to taxpayers around our state is ridiculous. But no, what we ought to have is a responsible legislative process where we don't had these bills where we put unrelated things together, which happens every year. And the only way I know to try to address it, as I tried to do this year, is through the amendment process and give people an opportunity to make the bill better. I also offered an amendment that would have just deleted that section entirely. Obviously, that failed as well. So there were opportunities given to get rid of this and just move forward with the parts of the bill that help real working Georgians. But unfortunately, that was not the order of the day.
You know, last but not least, I know you have you made a decision to support the presidential nominee?
Well, as I've said repeatedly, I am not going to do anything to allow Hillary Clinton to go into the White House. I'm a Republican, and I have historically always supported the nominee of the Republican Party. We've got to go to the convention in Cleveland. Obviously, it appears that Donald Trump has clinched the number of delegates and will be the nominee. But I'm intending to stand for election as a delegate at the convention in Augusta this weekend. I hope to be able to represent Georgia and Cleveland, and I certainly intend to support the Republican ticket from the top all the way to the bottom.
It took you a long time to get there, Senator, but you got there. Okay? I'm just going to say it took you a long time to get there, but you got there. Georgia Republican Party 2016 State Convention. Are you headed down there this weekend?
Yes, I'll be heading over later this week and looking forward to seeing a lot of old friends, and I think we're going to have a good convention.
I do too, and I think it would be neat. I'm not traveling down this weekend. I think it would be neat to see to hear Rick Perry. I do like Governor Rick Perry. I think he was a solid candidate, and his timing was off. I thought he was a solid candidate last time, but he was going through his back issues, surgery, and he just was not on his game. I thought the last time he ran, he should have been a solid candidate. But anyhow, it'd be great to see that. Now, I was looking at the schedule. I was kindly disappointed there's no strippers on the schedule. I mean, I went through the whole, I have it right in front of me. I mean, it just looks very Republican. They're naming everything the victory breakfast. I mean, if the libertarians can do it, why can't we?
Well, I'll tell you this. Talking about Rick Perry, we've had a great, bench of Republican contenders from all over the country. We've got a lot of good Republican governors who were not part of the 2016 campaign who I believe will be running down the road. And I think the thing that people understand, almost instinctive voters understand, and the thing that Donald Trump has done so well during this campaign is he understands that people are sick and tired of politicians serving a small elite group of people. He has put his finger right on the issue, which is what are we doing for Main Street? What are we doing for working Americans? And I think if that is the focus of this campaign, is what has happened over the last 8 years to improve the plight of the average middle class family in America, then Republicans are going to win from the top of the ticket all the way down. And that's where our focus needs to be.
Senator, there's two things. I mean, this guy's a multi-billionaire, but either he keeps track and he does somehow with his $1 billion organization, somehow he was able to keep his finger on the pulse of everyday people. Or he should get credit for having the best staff that searched out everything that's going on with people in Indiana, the flyover states. And I don't think it's the case. I think somehow this guy was able to keep in touch with the real world where politicians have lost touch. That's my belief myself. That being said, look at this. Rolling Thunder comes in this weekend, and this guy shows up, and this guy can't get any more New Yorker, Manhattan, and they love this guy. They're just bringing him in as one of them. No matter what group he goes and talks to, they bring him in and say, "You're one of us."
And I think people want a fighter. I think one of the great frustrations with Mitt Romney in 2012 was that he was too nice. I think a lot of people felt like he was too nice, and I think that when you see Donald Trump, I mean, the most recent thing, Elizabeth Warren, senator from Massachusetts, who has this sort of infamous episode of pretending to be a Native American to advance her academic career. She comes out and criticizes Donald Trump, and he responds by calling her Pocahontas. We want somebody who is going to punch back and who is going to stand up for the average working person in this country. And so I think, again, if he can keep the focus, and the Republican Party nationally can keep the focus on, what has been done for average working families in this country, I think we're going to be very successful in November.
Well, I like Charles Krauthammer on Fox, and, he's the brilliant thinker, and anytime we get to him, we're waiting, where's Charles going to go with this? And even when Charles, is the most serious guy in the world, breaks ranks, and it's humor to him. He said the other night when this happened, he said, this is why we like this guy. This is why, right here. He said, he laughed. He said, she comes out and she attacks him. And the next thing you know, he says, well, look what Pocahontas said today. And you think to yourself, really, man, really? And everybody else. Now, Mitt Romney, let's go with the example. Mitt Romney would have took what Elizabeth Warren said. It would have went into a spin room. Okay, it would have went into a spin room, and they would have studied the words, and they would have had a response that was gingerly and, didn't offend here or there, and he would have come out and responded. But no, Trump didn't think about it like that. He just said, look what Pocahontas said. Senator, you have a great time this weekend down there. And, the Georgia Republican Party, those are good people down there. They're good people, a good group. You're going to see a lot of good friends down there. What we want to do here in the near future is start talking about, and we want to get you back on real soon. And I know the session doesn't start till January, and it's really early, but I think there's a lot of planning has to go into how to represent some of these bills to a governor that has vetoed them and a governor that is not seeking re-election. I think you guys are up against the wall next session on what you can and can't do.
Absolutely. Well, I look forward to that.
Thank you, Senator. You have a great day, great week, and enjoy your weekend.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
We're talking to State Senator Josh McKoon from the Georgia 29th District down there, State Senator Josh McKoon. We got to get back to work here. I'm not against having the Super Bowl in Georgia, folks. Let me get this clear. I'm not against having the Super Bowl in Georgia. I think it's exciting to get the Super Bowl in Georgia, but for everybody to tell us how things work, some of these things have to stop. Now, we're going on 9 o'clock here. We're going to take a brief break, and when we come back, we'll get into some national issues. Sorry for such the disappointment. Go to break, Lonnie. We'll get back right after this.